Figueiredo has been cutting too much weight for too long to make it down to 125, and that's kind of what he was talking about, how he's going to be moving to 135. And it seemed to me, and I could be wrong on this, but
What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So, Nick, thankfully we have a conclusion to Moreno versus Figueiredo. It was great while it lasted, but I'm glad it's over. Figgy's moving up to 135. He's just simply too big for 25. Moreno's moving on as the new champ, and he is the real deal.
Yeah, and these guys are so evenly matched, and we've seen them go so many times now. But when that eye poke, or what Figueiredo was trying to claim as an eye poke, happened, I was like, oh my God, don't tell me we're going to have some sort of controversial finish. And then they get to show us the replays, and it did look like a clean punch to me, and that's exactly what it was. It landed a little funny. It was the thumb that actually went like into the eye, and then it was a push, kind of a weird scenario for the fight to end on. But, you know, this was just such a crazy fight. These guys are so evenly matched, and it's weird because they're evenly matched, but they're totally different fighters in the sense that what they bring skill-wise into the cage is so weird and so different from one another, but they actually cross each other out in many ways. You know, Brandon Moreno has some really, really good boxing. He comes in sharp. He's able to stay in and engage in like firefights when they get into a close inside boxing range. And Figueiredo's got great Muay Thai, and his distance with the kicks and stuff is very, very good. And then you get to the ground, and you would assume because Deiveson Figueiredo is a Brazilian, and everybody knows Brazilians can grapple and submit people really well, that he would have the upper hand. But Brandon Moreno's jiu-jitsu and wrestling, moreover, and all in all, I guess you can call it MMA grappling, has really gotten impressive. And now the way he's able to create these scrambles, create really good exchanges that end up turning the tides on his opponents, and then he winds up in a good spot, is very impressive. So I think the wrestling and grappling skills of Brandon Moreno mixed in with the boxing ties in perfectly to fight Deiveson Figueiredo with his Muay Thai and jiu-jitsu style. And I think personally, Figueiredo has been cutting too much weight for too long to make it down to 125, and that's kind of what he was talking about, how he's going to be moving to 135. And it seemed to me, and I could be wrong on this, but instead of focusing on developing skills in his camps, he's been focusing on making weight. And I sort of feel like he hasn't evolved quite as fast as Brandon Moreno has.
Yeah, the optics kind of do tell the story. When he shows up to a weigh-in, he looks very sucked out, very lean. I would say he's easily sub 5% body fat, which is not really a great thing. You don't want to come in that drained and that sucked out to a weigh-in. I mean, you do, after all, have to get into a cage and fight somebody just over 24 hours later. So there is a limit to where this becomes not an advantage to you anymore, but a disadvantage. And I think Deiveson was reaching and crossing that limit, and he did it one too many times. And at 35 years old, as you start to approach 40, your frame does tend to fill out a little bit. You get a little bit bigger. You're bigger than you were a decade ago. And 125 is just not tenable for him anymore. And so I'm excited to see what he does at 135, but I'm also very excited to see what Brandon does here as the champion now of the flyweight division. We saw him backstage with Pantoja. It looked like a friendly exchange that turned a bit annoying for Brandon because Pantoja wasn't really letting him have his moment. Obviously, Pantoja has a decision victory over Brandon, so it does kind of put him in that next position. Wish he would have given the guy his moment a little more than he did, but I love that fight. I think it's great. I think Brandon now can start to look at some of the blemishes like the Pantoja and try to avenge those. That's a great fight. There's a lot of good, exciting people coming up at flyweight, and so I think the sky's the limit for Moreno. And this guy, he really is as good as advertised, and I don't think people give him enough credit because he seems so friendly. He's not the quintessential fighter as far as look goes. He's got a Mickey Mouse tattoo on his back, but make no mistake, this guy's a killer.
Yeah, he sure is. And I think Deiveson moving up to 135 is the absolute best move. And when he takes his gloves off and he's speaking Portuguese, and I don't know, I'm not bilingual, I don't know how to understand Portuguese, I was like, no, don't retire. You just showed us a very impressive fight against the best 125er in the world. We don't think that you need to retire. I feel like you still got a lot left in you. And I was glad to hear that he was just retiring from that division. He's going to move up, make the weight cuts a little bit easier on himself. And I think 135 will be fun for Deiveson. I think he will match up pretty well against some of them. And, at 135, there's some really big guys. You got your Sean O'Malley's who are right at under 6 feet tall. But you also have some of your smaller fellas. You got people like more of a TJ Dillashaw frame. And I know TJ's retired, but there are people in that division that are also built like that. Yeah, Peter Yan, perfect example. So I think that Deiveson's going to match up really well with some of the people at 135. And I think that Brandon Moreno, is going to do what he has to do to really make a stamp on his legacy as far as being the 125 champion. Once you get through somebody 3 and 4 times, it's kind of like the Volkanovski thing. You're like, gosh, I don't really want to think about fighting right now. But when I do come back to thinking about fighting, I just want to fight somebody else.
Right.
And I guess you don't really escape it if you go in there and fight Pantoja immediately, since they have already fought before. But if you want to, cross that guy off your list and try to get a win back over him, it makes sense to do that. But with all the new faces that are coming into the flyweight division, I think that Moreno's going to have a lot of fun being the champion in the division and not have to face Figueiredo for a 5th time.
Definitely. And I think we should just touch on the actual finishing sequence there and why that wasn't an illegal poke, because there seemed to be some confusion. And I think Moreno got showered with beer and popcorn, and it was very undeserving, because that was a very clear, very fair victory for him. It was not the tip of the thumb that went into Figueiredo's eye. It was the knuckle of the thumb. And that's just basically considered to be a punch. It is a punch. He threw a punch. It was a weird position the way it landed, the knuckle of the thumb going into the eye. But make no mistake, that is a 100% legal mechanic. And then the confusion, I think, came from sort of the face push afterwards. But the face push happened on the opposite side of Figueiredo's face that he ended up grabbing. If you paid attention to what happened, Moreno landed the shot, and then there was kind of the push, and Figgy then grabbed his eye on the side that the shot was landed, and everybody thought that the push was what caused the eye poke. There was no poke there. It was a weird sort of exchange, but going back and breaking it down start to finish, there was no illegal mechanic, so it was a very clear-cut, very deserved stoppage.
Yeah, and when you look at the push, one of the fingers, I think it was Moreno's pinky, actually went into Figueiredo's ear. So it was all the way over on the other side of his face. And, when it comes to throwing a hook, everybody knows that you would throw it and your thumb can either be facing up, if it's a longer one, it can be facing down, or if it's a fully extended one, it can be actually parallel to the ground.
Right.
Your fist can be like this. That's the one he threw. It was one of those long-range hooks, and it just happened to land in a weird spot. And if you look at the UFC's gloves, they're 4-ounce gloves, and they don't want to have any excess weight on them. And if you look at the way they're shaped, unlike a lot of training gloves and puffy gloves, there is no thumb knuckle padding.
Right.
It just covers these 4 fingers, and then you see a little bit of tape from the wrap job. That's all you can see on the thumb. And so there really is nothing covering the thumb. And there's been plenty of fighters that have jammed their thumbs, broken their thumbs, throwing punches like that. But I'm sure Moreno's thumb is hurting pretty bad, but probably not as bad as Figueiredo's eye. It was a clean shot. It was a rough way to end the fight, but it did look like it was going to get only worse for Figueiredo after the way Moreno was able to hold him down and kind of ground and pound him through the rest of that 3rd round.
Yeah, if he was doing that to him with 2 solid eyes, if you take one out of the equation, you can't imagine it'd go any better. Thanks for watching this video, guys. We're your hub for all things combat sports. If that's your jam, we appreciate a subscribe and a like on the video, and drop us a comment down below. We'll see you next time.
Peace.